We are back and we are super excited about this topic, this episode. It is all about the evolution of marriage. Right. And I add a little subtitle like, how the heck do you stay married for a long time? Like, is that even doable in this culture, in the world that we live in? So we're super excited to be here with some friends, Team Mitchell, Dr. Joel, Dr. Naomi. 2 doctors. How is that even possible? Super cool to have you all with us this episode. 21 years of marriage.
Yeah,
21 of them.
Right, we're grown now.
To one person. 21 years.
21 years to one person.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah.
So hey, that's a testimony right there that it is doable. And Team Mitchell, they are over the marriage investors. They provide counseling. They do spiritual wellness retreats. They also have their own ministries that they do individually as well, serving youth, serving in the health wellness system, and their own individual ministries as well. So we're super thrilled to have you all with us to share more of your journey and your story and to talk about the evolution of marriage with us on today.
Yes. And also, we want to point out, too, they are the authors of the book Shattered, How to Overcome a Broken Marriage.
Yeah.
Yes, that's very important. Absolutely.
Thank you. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for having us. It's a blessing to be here with you all and sharing as we are co-laboring in this space.
Yes.
Being marriage is indeed a blessing, and wherever there are blessings, we know that the enemy is right there lurking around the corner.
So true.
Coming to see how he can steal, kill, and destroy.
Right.
And so we just count it a blessing to be able to, again, co-labor with you all as we, just help strengthen marriages and couples. We believe that, healthy individuals create healthy relationships and healthy marriages. Healthy marriages help create healthy families. Families build strong communities.
Yeah.
And build strong communities just help build the kingdom.
Absolutely.
That's right.
That's good.
Are blessed to be in this kingdom building community with you all.
Awesome. Wonderfully well said. So we're super thrilled to be here and to learn and to glean from you both on this episode.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's get started. So before you guys got married, what did you think marriage would be like?
Yeah, that's interesting because we always ask that question to couples that we counsel in premarital counseling, but then also afterward, because oftentimes we come into this space thinking totally different of what marriage would be like. And so for me, I grew up in a single parent household, and actually with my mom, my grandmother, and my grandmother's sister. So I was raised, it takes Joel to talk about this. I was raised by 3 very strong-willed Black women. And so I really didn't have a whole lot of examples of what it means for men and women to live together in marriage other than what I saw on television, or there were a couple of examples in our family, but they were at a distance. And so I always wanted to be married. I asked the Lord to give me a husband that I could be married to at least 60 years. And
That's
so
good.
this whole fairy tale idea though of what that meant, because I hadn't experienced it. So I really don't know if I came into the relationship with realistic expectations, and what it meant to have a marriage, to maintain a marriage, and what it would take for me, to be married, right? And so I had this whole, I think, fairy tale idea of what it meant for someone to be married, but not necessarily know what it meant to live with someone. I mean, I wasn't naive, but I just mean when I think about what it would take to be married, I don't think that I had realistic expectations.
I think that's such a good point. Yeah. Go ahead, Joel.
And for me, I came from a 2-parent household, but again, that came with its own challenges. I had my mom and my dad. We were a blended family. I have an older brother. from a previous relationship with that my dad had. But you would think my oldest brother was more of my mother's child than the two biological boys that she had.
Okay.
But again, so though all of those were factors, and so although we had a two-parent household growing up, just seeing the roles of men and women. So that was great for me to see the role of a husband, the role of a wife, and how, they differed. But I'm in my 50s now. So my dad was, people say alpha male now. Back then, it was I don't even know what come before alpha male. It was like, oh man, was hardcore.
Right.
And so that had an impact, and that shaped, my ideas and thoughts and expectations about what it was coming into a marriage. And so what we realized was that, our upbringings gave each of us a frame of reference.
Yeah.
And that frame of reference gave us a lens, just like Naomi has her glasses on. Her lens is totally different from mine.
Yeah.
And we're looking at the same thing, but through two very different lenses.
Two very different lenses.
My God. And so that in and of itself brought about, conflict and challenges, because we were both living into these expectations that the other was just totally unaware of. And so it was unavoidable that we just was colliding on some issues as it relates to marriage. But yeah, I think that's how we kind of stepped into it. I think for both of us, church played a big role. What we didn't get from home, as we, met each other in church, and just hearing about the roles of husbands and wives, it was sometimes very traditional. So that had an impact on us because church where we met, it was all about men being priests, protectors, and providers.
Right.
And I'm like, what in the world? What is that? I was trying to live up to something I didn't even understand, but that was a role. Or those were roles that were just kind of thrust upon me. That I had to figure out,
Yeah, that's true.
So
so some key points you both brought out. I love that Naomi was sharing, like, just with knowing that you wanted to be married, but how do you be in a marriage? How do you actually stay married? What does it look like to live with a person day in and day out? And I can relate to that because growing up, it's about, I can't wait to have that happy, home and picket fence and a beautiful wedding. And that's my fairy tale. That's my dream. But I didn't think about, what is it going to look like to live with a person day in and day out, serving them, that commitment, working and navigating through life together. And I love that Joel said two different lenses, two different lenses that you come into this marriage game with. And so how does that play out? How do those expectations that are external and outside of the marriage, how does that play into the relationship also? So you both brought out some really good points there.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. I think sometimes some people get their idea of marriage from Hollywood. The movies that we see. And perhaps maybe some other people, like in our families, you've seen broken marriages.
Yeah.
You've seen divorce. You've seen, all kinds of different situations and issues. And so going into it, you don't know exactly what to expect. So it's very interesting you bring that point. But going into it then, what are some lessons, guys? What are some lessons that you had to learn early on?
That's good.
Learn early on that, you can't get from a book, you can't get from, Hollywood movie.
You go get it from Naomi. Exactly. You go get it from Joel, and maybe a little bit of Jesus too.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So I think you want to jump in?
I'm thinking while you're talking, because you already started talking, so you had your thoughts.
But I mean, if we can be transparent.
Oh yes.
We started this journey, and again, we thought we did everything right. We met each other at church. We both were in the choir. Naomi was singing alto. I was singing tenor. We was right next to each other. So we love the Lord, and we went to, premarital counseling and all of those things. But when we got married, our marriage was an offering to God. We got married on Good Friday, so we really thought we were checking all of the boxes.
Yeah.
But then once we got into that thing and we had been married, had our children, and we were moving in ministry and all of those things, but unfortunately, I think around the eighth year or so, the bottom fell out.
Wow.
And the bottom fell out because what we like to say is, our marriage shattered. And one of the reasons, or a couple of the reasons why we learned that it shattered, was because even if you think about driving down the street and a small rock hits your windshield, and then how a lot of folk, I know this not y'all, but how we were, oh, we'll fix it.
So first it's just a little ding.
Come on now.
Yeah.
Fix it. You
That's
keep
good.
driving, and it'll splinter, it'll spread.
It spreads.
The entire windshield. And we from Chicago, so you just one pothole away from the whole thing shattering.
Right.
And that happened to our relationship. But
Wow.
it wasn't rock. What we found was it was a breakdown. The rocks that hit us was a breakdown in communication. It was a breakdown in trust.
Go ahead.
Breakdown in intimacy.
Yeah.
And we were just one pothole away from the whole thing shattering. And so had we had known about the importance of communication, because communication for us, effective communication.
Effective communication.
Yes.
That's good.
It's just the lifeblood. And things that I brought in from my relationship with my parents, I wasn't a good communicator. I didn't share my heart. I didn't share my thoughts.
Yeah.
We talk about the difference between having transactional conversations and transformational conversations.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good at the transactional. Hey, honey, did you take out something to eat for dinner? Did you get a bill? Did you take out the garbage?
Right.
We weren't having those transformative conversations, and that ultimately was one of the biggest breakdowns. And so when we think about living into it, we needed to learn it was how to really effectively communicate.
And my husband is passive aggressive, right? So he didn't share how he felt, really, and so I would ask him questions, but I could sense that that wasn't really how he felt.
Yeah.
Or he was just going along to get along type.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, that developed trust issues with him, because I'm like, he's not really letting me into, how he really feels, because he wanted to keep the peace, or he didn't like to argue, or he liked to say he's, what is it like you like to say, he's just real mellow.
I'm flexible.
Even he's flexible. He says, if he's flexible, you'll never get bent out of shape. And that has been
I'm so flexible,
and almost too flexible. But I think that for me, it was like, well, is he really sharing how he felt? And so when we talk about a breakdown in trust, that was part of it. So when he felt a certain way, he really didn't share how he felt. But he was feeling it. He was feeling it and experiencing it over here, but he didn't let me in on it,
Okay.
And that would leave him with resentment, because he didn't share how he felt, but he was resentful of me because he didn't say what he needed from me. And so that's part of effective communication, being able to be assertive and say what you need. And so that was an erosion of trust. So then we had a breakdown in trust, and then of intimacy, because we really like that acronym intimacy, into me see. So if you're not letting me into who you really are, then that is a factor. So I don't feel like being intimate with someone who's not being straightforward with me,
Right.
As a woman, we like to connect emotionally, right?
Absolutely.
So that became a breakdown for us as well. And so those were some of the earlier issues or discoveries that we made. And unfortunately, it was, almost too late, because by the time all of that happened, we were shattered. And people always say, you all really weren't shattered, where you just kind of had we were shattered.
We was like,
Wow.
Had it not
peace.
been for the Lord,
Wow.
we would have been like deuces,
We
because
got
this
Right.
is too hard to fix, and is it really worth it? Like
Right.
we loved each other, but sometimes, and well, not sometimes, but love is not enough, right?
Mm,
People
there
who
you
get
go.
divorced still love each other.
That's
Mm-hmm.
true. That's
And
Mm-hmm.
true.
even those times, like this was my guy, like we were best friends even before we got married, but I just didn't like him at that time, and we couldn't figure out how to make it work. We had these 3 babies under 3, and
Wow. Okay.
so that added to it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm glad you mentioned that about the love, because I was going to ask that question: is love enough? And I'm glad you mentioned that. But we want to go back just a little bit. Dr. Joe, you mentioned about transformative, being transformative. Can you describe that a little bit more? Go a little further in that for us?
Yeah, because again, it to Naomi's part, it's transformative conversations. It's really about being intimate, being
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable, sharing, your thoughts and your dreams. And, because sometimes a lot of people say, they grew apart. They not necessarily grew apart. They just stopped growing together because they weren't communicating effectively. And
That's
so
good.
transformative for me, and since Naomi brought in my passive aggressiveness, so transformative for me was, like Naomi stated, we got married, we know the stars that aligned, we are Christians, we thought we were doing the right thing, and we were like literally overtaken with blessings. I mean, our babies came, we were thriving on our jobs, thriving in our ministry.
Wow.
And then after we got married, Naomi, we had children like right away. We had honeymoon babies because we got married older, so
Okay.
we came right away. And so transformative was, when we had our babies and we had our careers, Naomi went from being a wonderful wife to being an extremely wonderful mother.
Uh-huh.
And the babies,
the marriage went on the back burner.
the babies became over just consuming.
Yeah.
And so for me, I didn't know how to express my needs. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
Because now, like Naomi is saying, the marriage is taking a back burner. And now I see Naomi with these 3 beautiful babies that all look like me.
All of them.
All of them, you know what I'm saying? And so now how can I express I needed something else from her when she holding all of my babies?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm feeling neglected.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? I started feeling rejected.
Mm.
And I
Talk
just was
about it.
going along to get along, as opposed to, being a transformative conversation would have been, well, honey, I need you too.
Yeah.
Right.
I
Right.
need some time too.
Yeah.
I need some intimacy too. I need to feel you. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
because Naomi was so wonderful with the babies, and that's where, her heart, was in terms of caring and nurturing them, I felt like I was on the outside.
Yeah.
And so
and
that
here,
impacted me.
Can I interject right there?
Well, of course.
Because he's flexible.
Right. Yeah. I think, as a Christian wife, I understood that I still needed to meet his needs, like sexually. And so even though I was exhausted with the kids and I never turned him down sexually. But what he said right then was really important. He said he needed intimacy. He needed time and attention. And so I was meeting his needs sexually, but he needed more than that.
Yeah.
And so my whole focus was getting the kids to, daddy's home, say hi to daddy, making sure that he felt them as a parent and a dad. But my focus was still on the kids more so than on him. And so when he said that, that's so important to understand the difference. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I'm so glad you brought that up, because it checks us as wives.
Yeah.
And there are women who can relate to being a mother. They're in that season of motherhood, early stages of that season. And how do you balance it all? How do you balance work? How do you balance motherhood? How do you balance marriage? Like, it's hard, and you're tired and you're exhausted. And then how do you still show up for your husband as well. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is one of the things we hear or we observe when there is a breakdown in that evolution of marriage. It's like, I got to go get my needs met somewhere else.
Yeah.
Something has shifted where you're not meeting my needs. I still have that need, but I'm going to go get it met. But it's not with my spouse. I'm going outside. I'm going to someone else. So I'm glad you kind of brought out those points about the transformative conversations, those deeper things that we got to uncover. You know, we got to have that conversation. It's not comfortable even. I think that's another thing to speak to. Like, that's an uncomfortable conversation. That's a hard conversation. So how do you have that without being defensive, without being attacking? But how do you have that hard, vulnerable conversation with your spouse so that you can, you know, continue to evolve together?
Yeah, I think that's important, because being able to express your needs, because at that point, our marriages, just like our lives, go through seasons. And so I think being in that season of early parenthood is important for us to understand that this is a season. And so how do we make the transition, and how do we make those adjustments? And we have to do it together, because we were in our own private situations and thoughts and feelings, but we didn't share them with each other. Like, I'm over here trying to figure out how to be, because my original plan was to, how to be a great wife. And so we spent the first, we got pregnant like right away, like 6 months into our marriage. So we didn't have a whole lot of time, but the time we had, we spent together. And so then to make that transition, now that my whole focus is on, because then we had twins. So we had 2 babies.
Right.
And so to make that transition to focus on the babies, and then he feeling like, well, dang, it was just the 2 of us at first. And now, I understand they have needs, right? All of a sudden it's 4. These jokers taking up all of my time.
Yeah.
So as a grown man, how do you say that? Like I need you, like Joe was saying, like that feels like that's immature, feels like I shouldn't have that need. So you don't express it. But that's a need that I needed to know he was having, because I'm taking care of him, sexually, but he has some other needs, emotionally. Men have emotional needs as well.
And another thing, I just want to touch on it, Ross, since you mentioned it, is we like to say, because it's so hard, you can never truly balance.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like balance is, the balancing act is just it just never really works to be able to truly balance everything.
Yeah.
But what God gave Naomi, it wasn't about balance, but it was about finding a rhythm.
Yes.
That's good.
It's a difference in balance and then having a rhythm, because when you understand that you have a rhythm, you understand that there will be transitions. There will be times when I have to focus on this a little bit more than what I'm focusing, what I previously focused on. But when you're able to have that conversation, like, okay, babe, I ain't going nowhere. I'm right here right now, because this is taking some time. Or then I'm gonna transition back. So, a rhythm, it flows. It gets back to my flexibility.
You dance.
You know what I'm saying? So you're flowing, and it's not just because the scales won't balance, but you can get into a rhythm. You can flow. And so that takes place, like when you mentioned us both having doctorates, we had the hard conversations like, well, babe, I want to go back to school. Well, I want to go back to school. Well, that costs money, and we got babies and we got jobs. So I do it. So we had to find a rhythm. Okay, so I'm gonna go now. It's not saying that you can't go. Then after I finished this piece, then Naomi went. Then after Naomi went, I was like, okay, well, she went and she got 2 degrees. I'm like, okay, well, I want to go back too. And so, then she got a MDiv and a Master of Pastoral Care and Counseling after I got my MDiv. And so after she finished that, I'm like, okay, well, I want to go back. And so I went and got my DMin. And then at one point, we was both in school at the same time.
At the same time, wow.
We were getting older. But it was, again, we found the ability to find that rhythm and that flow. And we were able, because what we learned was that in your marriage, God will give you the bandwidth, the capacity, so you meet each other's needs, so that both of your needs can be met. However, it's about communicating those needs and just that you're your spouse's biggest cheerleader, because I wanted Naomi to go back as much as she wanted to go. I'm like, we just have to find the time and space and rhythm to get it all done. But God allowed for both of us to be able to have what we both individually wanted. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Yes, it does. I'm glad you mentioned that word bandwidth. That's what my wife has been mentioning for the last, I don't know, the last month or two, about bandwidth, not having the bandwidth to do this or not having the bandwidth to do that. And that word is like, why does she keep saying that? Now I understand a little bit more of what you're talking about. So that's really good.
Yeah.
It gives me more insight.
And I love that you brought in, God is still the designer of marriage.
Yeah.
He didn't create something that doesn't work. But I do think that there are some key ingredients that we have to learn, like better communication, being vulnerable, communicating our needs to each other, and then being receptive of that so that you can work at meeting those needs. I was just reflecting, I think this weekend, one thought was like, you maybe can't change your spouse, but your spouse should be willing to change.
Yes. Yeah.
I can't change my spouse, but my spouse should be willing to change. I think that has to be part of the puzzle to really evolve in marriage together.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I think about the changing though, because again, I think we're more open to changing once you accept me, because I'm
Okay.
going to evolve, because
Mhm.
organisms, we're going to continue to grow and evolve. However, when we talk about emotional intelligence, some of the A's around emotional intelligence is, being affectionate, being appreciative,
Mhm.
being aware,
Yeah.
but also being attentive,
Yeah.
but
That's
being
good.
accepting. So Naomi, yes, I've grown over these 21 years in ways that I probably would never thought that I would grow. However, the thing was, Naomi accepted me first for who I was,
Absolutely.
That's good.
Yeah.
and so by her
Absolutely.
accepting me, she wasn't trying to like, okay, let me have this project and let me get you together. She first accepted me for who I was, and then that allowed us to see where God was going to take us. Because one of the things that Naomi always says is that you can't go with God and stay in the same place.
Right. Right.
There's gonna be some growth. There's gonna be
Yes.
some changes. There's gonna be some evolution.
Mhm.
What's that word when we come together? That we are like fitted together. What's that? When
Joint.
we together and we are.
Knitly.
What he's saying.
Yeah.
Cleaving.
When we cleave.
Is that the
You know what I'm
word?
saying? Yeah, because the scripture says, a husband and wife, they'll leave their parents and cleave. But
Mhm.
don't realize, Naomi and I, we were in a marriage, and there was some prayers being offered. But what we didn't realize, that word cleave is the root word of cleaver.
Okay.
And so that means there's some cutting going on.
Yeah.
Ah,
And
gotcha.
so
Okay.
when we come fitly joined together, we think of the cleave, but we don't think about the cutting
What
that
it
God
takes
has
to
to
actually
do.
cleave.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Us, jointly fitted. And so, yeah, all of that is a
Lord
part
have
of the
mercy.
mystery of marriage and
Mhm.
the mystery of two becoming one. So, yeah, it's some changing and evolving and
Mhm.
all of those things as we continue to grow together, because we never
Yeah.
stop growing.
Yeah. Especially if you're going to be married for another 40 years, because Naomi has already prophesied
I
60
know, right?
years. So you
That's
got
right.
Yeah, Lord have mercy.
You haven't made it to the midway point yet.
Good God Almighty.
And we're on the topic of changing and evolving and those things. I remember this, early on, I was very dogmatic. And I thank God that I'm not, I don't believe I'm that way now. I believe I've changed in some ways. How have you guys evolved over the years, 21 years of marriage, to be able to make it now? How have you evolved?
I think Joel is really, he has a great response to that because he also was dogmatic, even though he didn't like to think of himself as being that way. And so I think he talks about just making room for me and for my gifts. And so when we talk about the various roles that men and women have in marriage, sometimes we come into the relationship with these traditional type roles. Um, but when we came and God gave us twins and all of, we had to get in where we fit in, right? And so it was like, you know, it wasn't just my role to do this and his role to do that. We had to just, you know, what we call now the a complementarian role. Like we had to complement each other, and we had to, you know, help each other. You do the shopping, you do the cooking, you know. So we had to make it work, but not just insisting that this is your pure responsibility.
Yeah.
How we've evolved. I think we've also evolved because we've learned one of the things that we really enjoy is kind of almost like a competition of how we serve each other. Like we try to outserve each other. Like what if I'm meeting your needs and you're meeting my needs, then both of our needs will be met. You know, I don't have a problem with fixing his plate. I love to cook, and he doesn't come home expecting that it's a meal on the table, you know, necessarily. But if he's going to work and I'm at home, then I'm going to make sure that he has something to eat, whether that's me going out to fix it or whether I'm fixing it or, you know, bringing something in, or if I'm fixing it at home, that he doesn't expect that to be my role as a wife, you know, the slave in the kitchen. You know what I mean? So, but there were, you know, there are some views and people feel like that is just the role of the wife. And we've even counseled people who think that, you know, that's her role and that's what she's supposed to do. But if you're the better cook, then why don't you cook?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, we and that's why because we're Christian and we are believers and we love God. And I think that's how some of those other ideas began to creep in, because when Naomi and I were best of friends, you know, I saw her as a professional. I saw her working at corporate and craft and all of the things that she was doing, because that's actually, it attracted me to her in terms of being able to see her operating in those gifts. But then when we got married, like some of that started shifting. Like I was like, well, no, that's my role to do that. Or that's my role. I'm like, not, you know, giving Naomi the space to operate in her gift and her having challenges. I'm like, to Naomi's point, if you're better at the finances, why I'm over here sinking the ship?
Right.
You know, because I'm a man. Like, and you're over there, accountant major, you know.
Right.
But because my role is like this identity or this definition of what this role of what a man is supposed to be or a husband is supposed to be, you know, God knew what we needed. He knew I couldn't put two and two together. But so he blessed me with my wife, you know, or so there's just evolving and being okay. Because what we tell couples, this is you make your love.
Make love, yeah.
When you and so it's more than about making love, having sex. It's about making your love.
Yeah.
Your marriage. What and it may not look like anybody else's.
Absolutely.
But you're making yours, and whatever you all make and it's working for you, I don't care. I could be with a mop bucket and a broom in my hand, and if I could tolerate my cooking, you know, I'll be the one in Chef Boy ID. But whatever the case may be, we do it to make sure we have what we need, and it may not look like anybody else's, and that is perfectly okay with us. And so we are here trying to make the best of our relationship and our marriage and do what works for us. And we encourage couples to do, you know, do you. You know,
do you.
It may not fit anybody else's, you know, paradigm, anybody else's definition, but as long as you all are pleasing one another and it's pleasing in God's sight, have at it, you know. And so that's been a part of our growth in terms of how we see one another and how we support one another and how we encourage one another. Because again, we come from very traditional backgrounds where even Naomi being a preacher and a pastor was not always welcome. And
Right.
so we had to do some things that was outside of the box, and we had to be okay with that because we knew we were doing what God was calling us to do.
That's
Wow.
excellent. That's excellent. That's good. Man, so I don't know if you guys heard this comment before by the actress Viola Davis when she mentioned about um the marriage starts, and she was serious. The marriage starts when you look over at the person and you just want to kill them. What are your thoughts? I mean, I think personally that was too extreme, but that's my thought. What do you guys think of that comment that she made?
The marriage starts when you look over at a person and you just want to kill them.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's interesting. I don't know if it starts then. I think that when I hear her say that, one of the things we think about is that sometimes the thing that attracts you in the beginning could be the thing that repels you when you get to a certain place in your relationship,
That's
right?
true.
So the thing you was like, oh, that's so cute, then later on, it's
Mm-hmm.
then you start to be like, oh God, did I ever like that?
Right.
So it's a thin line. It's a thin line. But I think that I interpret it in that way. Not that the marriage starts. I think that there's some reality in seeing that thing, because at that point you realize that your love tank is probably empty, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't have anything or your love bank, your love tank, however you want to look at it. At that point, you've gotten to the point where you're either running on empty or you haven't made enough deposits or you've made too many withdrawals. And so that's when you want to kill each other, right? Because you don't have anything there to draw upon.
Right.
So that is probably what my interpretation of what she meant. But I don't think that's when the marriage starts. I think that that's when you probably take off the rose-colored lenses.
Yeah, I interpret it as, and again, for us, I interpret it as, the importance of friendship.
Yeah.
Because for Naomi and I, when we started, we didn't do traditional dating because, we just were the best of friends. And so the way I view that is that a lot of times in our marriage, when we didn't love each other, and there were many times that we didn't love each other, we still liked each other. And like she was still my girl, you know what I'm saying? And so I still never wanted anything ever bad to happen to her, or I just always wanted the best because I love who she is as Naomi, not just my wife. And so I think in terms of that wanting to kill each other, there'll be times when you are not in love.
Yeah.
You are not lovable, but I still like Naomi and who she is as a person. And so I think it's that friendship that has helped us, overcome and sustain through these 21 years when we didn't love one another, when we were not in love with each other, but we just, liked who we were and we still wanted the best for each other, whatever at any cost. And so I always think, there's a little cartoon that's on social media, and it's about an older couple, and they're sitting on a bench, and it's raining, and they only have one umbrella. And so the older guy, he's still sitting over here getting wet, and he's still protecting his wife with the umbrella so that she wouldn't get wet. So I would give my umbrella to her, even though I don't even want to be next to her, but I let it get wet. So, and that's just the reality of.
That's a great analogy.
What it means to be married, and sometimes when you cannot stand one another, you still want the best.
Well, Joel and Naomi, at your age, you all could have ruined the towel. You could have said, I am done with this, but you didn't. And we're so grateful because I can only imagine the number of couples that have been ministered to by your journey, your stories, your gifts, your talents, all that you contribute to marriages and all that you stand for as a family. And we've gained so many great nuggets from this call, finding your
Absolutely.
rhythm, being who you are. Do you. Don't
Mm.
try to compare your marriage to someone else. Don't try to be like anyone else. Figure out what works for the two of you and make it work.
Right.
Just some of these important
Oh, yeah.
nuggets can help you as a couple evolve together.
And we've gotten nuggets from them. I don't know if you guys recall seeing us at the Heart Life Marriage Getaways before. Heard you guys speak a few years ago, I believe it was.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we've gotten nuggets, so we already know what you guys normally deposit. So
you.
we appreciate the deposits that you guys continue to make, and I'm sure you're doing that with other couples. So
we are going to be promoting the marriage investors. This is the season. We're seeing marriage throw in the towel. We're seeing marriages give up. We're seeing people who don't even want to commit to marriage because they're like, it don't work. So why should I even do it?
Exactly.
But we encourage you, link up with the marriage investors, get those nuggets and seek out a new trajectory for your family. Any last words or nuggets or thoughts you all want to leave? We could stay on this call for another 2 hours easily, but any last parting nuggets you all want to share with us?
Oh, just thank you all. Thank you for having us. Thank you for the work that you all are doing to make marriages last. We just appreciate co-laboring with you all in this work because it's needed. Marriages is a wonderful gift. And there are those who want to be married. And I think, we encourage dating, coaching, don't just have premarital counseling, but have premarital, so that even before you make that investment, before you get because most people won't turn around if they have the ring and the invitation and the dress, they'll just keep going. But try, come and get some support first so that, if this is the road that God wants us to go down. And I think that is so much wisdom in that.
Yeah, and I would just say to those who are watching, if you're in a relationship and you're having challenges, get help. Help. We have a whole community of practitioners. A lot of us in the Black community, there's stigma around getting help. I'm not going to talk. And sometimes it comes because even from my childhood, we all grew up or heard about people saying, what goes on in this house stays in this house. And unfortunately, we carry that into our relationships.
That is so true.
The belief, and don't quote me, but there's a scripture saying God gave some preachers and some pastors and teachers. I like to add in some counselors and some therapists and some coaches for the edifying of the body.
Amen.
That's right.
And so, if you are having challenges, reach out, seek help, because again, we don't come understanding all of the skills and tools that we need, but they're available. And so if anyone, if you need help, we like to say, hey, it's just like seeking out a church home. If one counselor doesn't do it, that's fine. Go find somebody else.
And
if it's not
right. A list that we can refer you to, like we share it, like even with Nisha and Wes, we love them, and that's why we were at Heart Life, and so even with you guys, we would, so there's a whole list of folk that are here to support you, and you don't have to go through it alone.
Amen.
Great. Can you guys just leave some information for us, for those who are watching, how people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, you can catch us on all of our social media handles at The Marriage Investors. That's at The Marriage Investors, Facebook, Instagram. You can also visit our website, which is www.themarriageinvestors.com. And you can learn more about the services and resources that we provide. And you can get a little taste of Naomi and I. We have different information there. So yeah, this is our life's mission, our passion. And so we love it, and we just love what you all are doing. So again, thank you all for allowing us to come on and share And we believe it's so vitally important doing things like this because
Oh, yes.
there's awareness, and it lets people know that there's help available, and they see people who look just like them getting the help that they need, and it reduces stigma. And I mean, our goal, we would love for everybody just to be able to go and get help, just like you go and check on your sugar, a high blood pressure. just go and get what you need, because
get what you need.
Get what you need.
That's right. Get what you need. Get what you need. We appreciate this conversation, and we appreciate you all taking time. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment, things that you love about this show. We appreciate it. And we appreciate Dr. Naomi and Dr. Joel Mitchell for joining us for Keep the Fire Burning podcast. Thank you all so much.